It is hardly surprising that Jimmy Page has been featured on the covers of guitar magazines since he was a little boy. Page, who has been inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, was the most sought-after guitarist in Britain for a number of years during his peak of popularity, and is unquestionably the most influential guitarist of his era. The nature of the mysteries that lie behind the glistening shell of iconic guitar riffs has only been hinted at. Who could have anticipated, after all, that the guy behind the Stairway of Heaven had a secret history of being a Satanist? Maybe it started when he discovered an abandoned Spanish guitar in the Miles Road home, where his family had moved when he was 12 years old. Unexpectedly, the instrument was in excellent operating order, but nobody could identify its owner. No one from the previous owners claimed it, nobody seemed to know why it was there, and no family friend had brought it over. Page would never have been interested in music if it weren't for the unclaimed guitar. So maybe there were other factors at work. He started practicing alone after becoming enthralled with the enigmatic instrument, which marked the beginning of his path to fame and something darker. He played in a variety of bands when he was younger. However, everything ended up disintegrating in various places. His life appeared to be in a state of chaos, and things weren't progressing as he had anticipated. At times, he didn't even think of his music as a serious career, telling his pal that he was more interested in finding a cancer cure. Page chose to pursue her education while playing the guitar, in contrast to her peers. And for that reason, at the age of 15 he ended up in an English library, clutching a strange little book, and becoming more and more enthralled. He was clutching Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley, an English occultist. He later said that reading it was like something that just clicked, and his initial reaction upon finishing was, "Yeah, that's it. I found my stuff." He then started on a bizarre trip that frequently caused him to get distant from Christian audiences, who believed his influence to be malevolent and demonic. Page developed an obsession with Crowley shortly after he was discovered. His career likewise took a positive turn after this period. Page was a key figure in the formation of the notorious band Led Zeppelin, which has been characterized as a band of devilishly evil individuals who were satanic artists. From 1968 until 1980, Led Zeppelin was in operation and released a number of well-known and acclaimed albums. But because of Page, the band's content had a lot of esoteric imagery, which caused controversy. Led Zeppelin's fourth album, which has 4 esoteric symbols that stand in for each of the band's members, is a fantastic illustration of this. His own sign, known as Zoso, has associations with astrology and the zodiac. It was first used in Girolamo Cardano's 14th century alchemical grimoire, Ars Magica Artificii. This and other zodiac symbols have been included into several of the ensembles Page wore while on tour for this album. Most notably, his dragon outfit featured embroidered images of Page's personal astrological alignment, the Cancer Moon, Scorpio Ascendant, and Capricorn Sun. The album's cover art also included a painting called The Hermit that was based on a tarot card design, although Bington Colby, an unidentified artist, was given credit for the picture. There were later rumors that Page was the true creator. This was further demonstrated when, in a fantasy scene from Led Zeppelin's concert movie, the song remains the same. He changed into the painting's persona. But this was only the start of Page's fascination in the occult. He went on to establish the Equinox, an occult publishing business and bookstore, in the 1970s because, in his opinion, there was not a single bookstore in London with a decent selection of occult literature, and I was furious that I couldn't obtain the books I desired under his control. At its height, the firm published 2 books, the facsimile of Crowley's 1904 edition of the Galatia and Isabel Hickey's Astrology, a Cosmic Science. The lease expired without being renewed because the business did not succeed. However, Page was unimpressed, stating that all he wanted was for the store to serve as a hub. He was captivated by Clay and frequently delved into what he wrote, as though it were the inspired word of God. Though the specifics of this are still up for question, Crowley was a misunderstood talent of his era, in his opinion. Although he claimed he didn't wish to force his views on others, he felt that Crowley was a response to his own introspective thoughts, and that he had applied his philosophy to his daily life, fervently adhering to his teachings. He clarified this position in an interview, saying that the key is to accept one's free will, find one's identity, and then proceed to fulfill it rather than living a life filled with frustration and repression. It basically involves accepting who you are. Kenneth Anger, another Crowley fan who made underground films, asked him to compose the music and serve as the composer for the movie Lucifer Rising. Anger contacted him after he made 23 minutes of music for this, claiming that the film was 28 minutes long and that Page was doing the work without doing it right. He claimed that he was only a dabbler in the occult and that no one could actually contribute anything significant to it. He attributed this on Page's drug use. Page's fascination with drugs was perhaps the only thing that was as essential to him as his obsession with the occult. He freely acknowledged that he was a strong user and addict during the height of Led Zeppelin in the 1970s, stating in an interview that drugs were an essential component of the entire experience from start to finish. He frequently used drugs while on tour, particularly during the band's 1973 North American tour, but he eventually had a memory wipe and lost much of his recollection. According to manager Richard Cole, this nasty habit started with heroin during the 1975 album Presence recording sessions. And soon after, he revealed what we were all afraid of. He had an addiction. His drug usage had begun to negatively affect his performance by the time the tour arrived, and he had lost a significant amount of weight, which alarmed his family, friends, and fans. His interactions with band members have also changed as a result of his isolation, coldness, and distance. His regular use also led to extended absences from the studio, and the band's slow deterioration may have been a warning sign because, after they split up, Page finally realized his mistake and said that he was no longer addicted. However, given that Page was arrested twice for narcotics possession, in 1984 and 1982, the veracity of that remark was under question. However, because of his high profile, there were very few consequences. He escaped the severe ordeal uninjured on both occasions, receiving a 12-month conditional release on the first arrest and only a fine on the second. Page disliked being called out for the drug at the time, even though she was closely linked to it. He was extremely offended in a 1988 interview with the Musician magazine, when the interviewer mentioned that his name had become synonymous with his drug use. He responded angrily that he did not appear to be a smack addict, and was definitely not one, and that he would prefer not to be accused of such remarks if possible. However, his stance softened and changed when he had matured and his use had really decreased. "I don't regret it at all, because when I needed to be really focused, I was really focused," he said in response to the question of whether he regretted his drug addiction in a 2003 interview with Q magazine. "That's all. Only 3 weeks were used to capture both Presence and In Through the Outdoor. That's gone a long way. You must stay on top of it." But in the end, Jimmy Page's assessment might not be all that incorrect. Perhaps the world wouldn't have had the diamonds he ultimately produced if he hadn't done some of the worst things. Maybe the question is whether his drug usage, occult fixation, and scandals were his fault after all, or if he was just a product of his time and situation, trying everything in his power to become the genius we now know and adore. Which Jimmy Page song is your favorite? Post it in the space provided below.